this is how I can really strongly say how Salesforce values trust as its number one priority. It runs really deep into all our DNAs. It's really imbibed within us to make sure that at the end of the day, the quality is good.
That was Roopa Mohan, a principal member of technical staff here at Salesforce. She's been with the company for 7 years, and 5 of those years have been on the legendary Hammer team. Hammer is the suite of tools that we use here at Salesforce to help ensure the quality of every single release that we put out the door. My name is Joshua Burke. I'm a developer evangelist here at Salesforce, and on the Salesforce Developer Podcast, you're going to hear stories and insights from developers for developers. So today we talk a lot about Hammer, a little bit about unit testing and how it's good for everybody, and learn some insights from Roopa, who, remember, has been around long enough that she remembers back when this was a manual process.
It used to be a really manually intensive process, and we used to do this for 3 weeks. And end of that, we just get a handful of bugs. It'll be like, okay, is this even worth it? Am I even doing all of this for any reason? But then we always remember that these bugs are going to make a difference to the customers. And these would be like really impactful things. If they went to the customers, it's going to make a huge difference. It's going to really break things down. So we'll be like, okay, it's not too bad. Let's go do this.
Well, now times have changed a little bit since what Rip is describing here. The number of tests that we're doing with Hammer has grown, let's say, significantly since her description. Well, the number might surprise you. So let's talk a little bit about what Hammer really is.
So as of last release, we had more than 180 million tests. And this number only keeps growing as our customers' businesses grow. So to give you a gist of what Hammer is all about, the idea is really simple. So we want to catch any functionality changes in the upcoming release that could disrupt customers. So it's pretty much just making sure that when we go for a release, the entire process is going to be easy on customers. What we do for this is we run all of a type of customer operation in an existing production version. So that's the production version that customers are using today. And then we capture the results out of here. And then for the same data, for the same customer data, we change the application layer underneath to be the new upcoming release that we're going to send to production soon. And then we run the same customer operation. And again, we capture the results.
I want to make sure everybody listening heard that number correctly. 180 million unit tests.
180 million tests, and it's growing. And we run 180 million tests twice, once in the current release and once in the upcoming release. So it's mind-blowing.
So this is like epic level A/B testing. You've got data layer, you've got your application layer. You run your 180 million unit tests, and then you swap out your application layer and you do the whole thing all over again. And one thing I learned from Roopa was that Hammer's not just a hammer, it's actually a hammer of hammers. There's currently 5 distinct hammers that we use for testing. There may be more in the future.
Let me see. So we have at least 3 types of hammers, and it keeps growing. So we have the Apex hammer, which is running the unit tests. And then we have the packaging hammer, which runs the ISV package comparison. And then we have the Salesforce hammers, which would compare how the templates that are used for sign up work between pre and post.
Okay, so 180 million unit tests, multiple hammers testing multiple scenarios that are actually run twice, so that we can do A/B testing against the current application layer and what's about to be the released application layer. Just how long can that take?
The actual setup takes several weeks. So it requires really a lot of coordination between a cross-section of teams. So we have the infrastructure engineering, we have the database engineering, we have the network security, release engineering, and a bunch of feature teams that need their hammer to be run. All of these teams work together really closely. And then they start coordinating many weeks before the process can even start. The actual hammer process runs between the time our internal code freeze happens and we finish all the analysis and the bug fixing before we actually go for the first sandbox release. So it's actually many weeks that are involved. And there's a reason we even call this the hammer, because the entire process is really intensive. So right from the setup, we have a lot of conditions going on there, which needs to make sure that nothing affects the customers when we are doing any of these.
All of this data, all these scenarios, all of this situation where we're trying to figure out bugs that the new application layer is going to cause that can be created into cases and then fixed before release. how do we identify those? And, my suggestion was like maybe a big green thumbs up or red thumbs down. But it turns out the Hammer team actually has something much, much cooler.
We have some really cool machine learning algorithms that would go look at all of this data. The first thing they do is they clean up all the secure stuff that shouldn't be seen by human eyes, because that could be some sort of customer information, something that's GDPR centric that shouldn't be seen by anybody else. It's the first precaution that we take is go clean up all the secure data. And then the next thing it does is group all these messages into similar looking messages. So we have something like clusters of similar looking messages. And then it goes on to crunch this further. And then it comes down to relating those messages to actually the feature changes that we've made from the developer side. We end up correlating both of these, and then we come up with a handful of real bugs. So you can imagine, so it's like 180 million tests, and finally we just get a handful of real bugs. And these bugs to us are like actual customer cases, because these haven't seen customers yet. But if they were to go there, these are going to become customer cases. So we take that as our highest priority and fix these. And that's kind of how the Hammer converts all of the data that it generates to actually fixable things, actionable things for us developers, which would make a difference to our customers.
So that's how they handle 180 million tests and all the various scenarios. But what about 200 million? What about 300 million? Roopa has seen the evolution of Hammer go from its early manual days to machine learning algorithms. And so what does the next generation of Hammer look like? Well, it turns out we're kind of looking at it.
But we know that it's going to grow forever. So the solutions that we've been coming up with is more to do with big data. So we want to be able to handle all the data that's thrown at us. And our algorithm now goes back to, so with all the historical data that we have, our machine learning algorithm knows how issues would be and how non-issues would be. So it kind of learns from its own historical data. So as we go farther and farther, the process just gets smoother. And I think it has the capability to handle a lot more. I'm thinking we're probably at the last of the generation of tools we develop, at least for now. With the whole thing being end-to-end automated, things are so much better.
Okay, at this point, I want to summarize a few things that Roopa and I talked about during the interview that are very important, but I want to just kind of be able to bundle them up into just kind of a quick reminder PSA. Roopa really wanted to make sure everybody understood that everything that Hammer is doing is secure. It is all being handled in an environment that is not affecting any of your production data. This is an incredibly safe scenario, which is built on trust and transparency. Also, not every org is set up for Hammer every release. That's actually chosen by an algorithm. You can look in setup to see just how Hammer is actually working. You can look to see if Hammer's flagged anything, although to note, Roopa pointed out that some of those might already be fixed by Salesforce, even if you see those in there. And from those pages, there's more help pages out there about how Hammer interacts with your org. Now, I did want to shift gears at one point and just posit the question to Roopa, what would happen if we woke up in a world without Hammer? What would that mean for Salesforce?
Okay, that would mean chaos. Chaos. You can really do like one of these real...
You're going right to post-apocalyptic visions, aren't you?
Oh, exactly. Yeah. It's going to be worse than that. So the first thing that we do is the upgrade process wouldn't even go as promised. So if we say this Saturday, these instances are going for upgrade, even that may not happen because that could be issue stopping that. So Hammer catches all of these small, tiny issues well in time, and that gives us time to fix them as well so that the actual upgrade is really smooth for customers. So imagine they just wake up on Saturday, boom, yeah, their instance is upgraded. Yeah, they just go ahead and continue with whatever they were doing. There could be a few issues that were missed by Hammer. I guess with the volume of data that we're handling, it's not really so straightforward to catch all the issues, but at least the impact of these issues should be much lower than the initial set of issues that we caught.
That's huge. It's huge. The impact that the Hammer team has on our customers, and you can hear, how much care there is in making the customer experience a seamless one. As Roopa herself put it, boom, Saturday, your release is done. It's just there for you. The trains are running on time. It's an amazing job that the Hammer team is doing. Now, Roopa being an expert in unit testing, I wanted to throw some scenarios at her about bad testing and bad unit tests. And I asked her to describe them in a scale of 0 to 5, with like 5 being lava. And it turned out that we had a shared nemesis.
Wow. This is actually a 4 for me because I've seen this a lot when I'm going through the hammers as well. So there are these tests that just go on doing like I++, I don't know, do this like 10,000 times. And then the code coverage number is met. But in terms of the hammer, I mean, we want to actually see something from the org run through the test so that when the hammer process runs, we actually go and find an issue. So with the I++, we know that our counter is working all right, but that's pretty much all the feedback.
Congratulations, developer. You proved that one of the most basic constructs in programming history still works. Thank you. Thank you for that help. So that's interesting. It's a 4 for you because it'd be a 5, but you've been desensitized to the lava because you've seen this one so much.
There are actually all these Stack Overflow forums that heavily recommend this. There's like, oh, you're running out of code coverage. You want to do your 75%? Go do this I++. And there's like tons of upvotes. Like, wow, that's such a beautiful idea.
Okay, see, now that's a 5 for me. Just hearing that, that's a 5 for me. I used to tell my developers that it was probably a fireable effect to do this because I was going to ask you, what's the worst unit test you've ever seen?
I think the I++ ones.
It takes the cake, right? Like there's really no other lazy way to cheat yourself out of unit testing. Oh, and CL data? Yeah, Roopa's not a fan.
Actually, I want to use this opportunity to add one more thing. So in Salesforce tests, we have something called CL data annotation. By default, this is false. So many years back, this used to be true, which means the test would get to look at the actual data in the org and it would make changes to the data. It would go play around with it. So in general, if you keep your unit test to create its own data, and then clean it up at the end of it, the value of the test is much, much better.
I want to thank Roopa for sitting down and having this wonderful talk. And I want to thank the Hammer team for all the amazing work that they do for our customers. Now, before we go, I did want to ask Roopa about any non-technical hobbies she has. And well, the answer surprised me.
Okay. So I'm a singer. So I've actually participated in quite a few reality television shows, the music ones in India. I've won a few of them. That's my favorite non-technical hobby. I just like to keep in touch. Now I'm learning the Western classicals. I've been learning the Indian Carnatic, but now I'm trying to branch out entirely, explore new things. So the Western classical is now keeping me engaged.
And that's our show. I want to thank Roopa and the entire Hammer team for all of the hard work that they do to make sure that our releases are going smoothly for our developers and for our users. Now, if you liked what you hear, please head over to your podcast service of choice, give us a like and a subscribe. And if you want to know more about this show, go to developer.salesforce.com/podcast. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you next week.